So keep this in mind. Does anybody know, Perrin, why we have flats? Do you know why we have flats?
Because the air goes out of the tire.
That's a good answer. How about you, Neil?
Something causes the air to go out of the tire.
That is true, but I'm going to show you. There are two reasons, and I got some visuals here.
Puncture around.
Usually, when you get a flat tire, you run over something sharp. A lot of people say, why'd I have a flat? Well, you probably, maybe, ran over something sharp. Now, sometimes you can run over something, and then 5 miles down the road, as you're rolling down the road, it will work its way through the carcass, then hit the tube, then give you a flat. Or you get home, your bike's fine, the next morning you're ready to ride, you have a puncture. So something's worked through the carcass, it's probably sharp. Shard glass, piece of metal wire, sliver of glass, anything like that, a thorn, it can do it. Now another reason why people have flats is called pinch flats. Let's say you don't maintain your tire pressure, and you hit a pothole, or you jump over the curb, and you hit your front wheel or your back wheel hard. Well, what you're doing is you're pushing that tube out, and you get these two little snake bites. You get a hole here and a hole there, so keep that in mind. And that's why a lot of people have flats. And then there's another reason why people have flats. Underneath on your wheel, you have a rim strip, and the rim strips look like this. And these are rubberized strips, or on a nicer road bike, this is called Velox. This wraps around it to cover up the spoke nipples. I said spoke nipples. But those spoke nipples have sharp little edges, and they can cause a puncture as well. But that actually covers it. So maybe your rim strip is not covering those spoke nipples correctly. So that could be the culprit as well. Now, let's say you have a puncture. And the first thing you want to do, and this is perfectly okay, is you want to say a few expletives, and you want to let it out. It's okay. So keep that in mind. You want to let out that emotion so it's not all pent up on the inside. So let it out. Any way you want to do it. That's your fault. Now, when you have a puncture on the road, if you're mindful, you don't want to brake, you want to come to a rolling stop. Because if you brake, what could happen is you could accidentally have a crash. So you want to come to a rolling stop and then stop and pull off the side of the road. Now if you're mindful, keep this in mind. You want to shift down, this is the cassette back here, shift to the smallest cog in the back. And the reason why you want to shift to the smallest cog to the back is because it's going to be easier to remove the wheel out of this assembly. Does that make sense? So let's pretend you have a flat. And we'll mimic it, okay? You have a flat, you say a few choice words, and you wonder what you're going to do. And you're flat, right? Now, usually on most road bikes, you'll have on your rear brake a little fulcrum right here. You open that up, and it spreads out the calipers. So keep that in mind. And the reason why it spreads out those calipers is for the wheel to fall to pieces. I shift it down to the small cog. I open that up. Now I need to release the quick release lever. Open that up, and it's loose, but it's called dropouts, and they actually drop out of the wheel. It's going to drop out. You'll probably get your hands kind of dirty. Lay the bike down with the drive side facing the sky. Always remember to do that. Don't lay that rear derailleur on the ground, on top of it. Now, to change a flat, you need some certain tools. Sure. You're going to need a spare tube. These little tools right here are called tire levers. They come in aluminum alloy, plastic. Plastic will maybe protect your rims a little bit better, but these aluminum are pretty nice. And then you will need a source of air. This is called a CO2 card. And another source of air, let me show you this on my personal pack. Nobody gets to see inside my pack. Except you. In the whole world, too. This is called a mini pump. It's tiny, small. You have to work more with a mini pump, but it's designed to pump up. And these are designed to get you back home. A CO2 cartridge probably has about 80 psi pressure. Now, what's cool about a CO2 cartridge, condensates and it gets really cold. And on a hot day, you can stick it in your armpit and cool down your body core temperature. It works beautiful. Now, there are other places you can put it, but this is my favorite. So keep that in mind.
No.
Yay. Now the little pump, now you know, after you use the CO2 cartridge, it's spent, it's gone. Still have cold with it. Easy with that. The mini pump, you don't have to buy the cartridges, and you can, if you're environmentally friendly, you're not letting out any CO2. But this is a lot more work, but it's a lot more control. I carry one of these. I'm kind of old school. Now,
I've got one of those that you sold me at the old shop.
really? You still using it?
I've only used it once.
Okay. Now, remember my source of air? This is one of my sources. That's my sister-in-law, Gloria. She's a source of air. That's not the right source of air, but she is. A CO2 cartridge with a dispenser, like I have here. Tire levers, of course. And, where's it at? You need to carry a spare tube. Now you can carry a little patch kit, but that's going to take you a long time. This is much quicker and easier. Always carry a spare tube. And then there's a picture of my little mini pump. So you got a couple options there. So, now, we've got to take this bad tube out of this rear wheel. So what we're going to do first, I'm kind of sweating and mad, and you might want to ask your buddy if he's got a spare tube if you don't. That's being irresponsible. But you use your tire levers. And I want to show you something cool about the tire levers. I usually start at the valve, okay, right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pry one side of this tire off the rim. Just one side. So I'm going to kind of pry it up. And on these tire levers, there's a little notch. And that little notch is like a helper. And I hook it on the spoke so I can move to the next side. And what I'm doing is kind of working my way around. It takes a little practice, but it's okay. Just be patient. And if you get mad, it's okay. You can say a few words. And then if you get like 3/4 of the way around, I can just go on around. Now I'm going to take the bad tube out. Got a hole in it.
So you don't take the whole tire off the rim.
You don't have to. A lot of people do. When you do, that's kind of a mistake because it's more of a hassle to get it back on. Just take 1/2 side of the bead. There's a bead, if you can see that.
What is the bead?
My cameraman can see that. You can touch it and feel it. It's a bead. It's a wire bead in there. And that fits inside the rim.
Okay.
And when pressure is added to the tube, it keeps from blowing off the rim. But I'm going to take the bad tube out. Okay? Now, one thing I might want to do is visually inspect the outside of the tire. Make sure there's no drastic cuts, no slivers of glass, and be careful while you do this because you can really cut yourself. So keep that in mind. So the outside of the tire looks pretty doggone good. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go underneath very gently and see if any shards of anything have got through the carcass. Because if you put a good tube back in there and it's still in there, you're wasting your time. You'll have no problem. So I want to work my way around and be careful not to grab too much. It feels pretty clean to me. But if you have a little piece of glass, you really need to take the whole tire off. Try to get that sliver out the best way you can. Another thing you need to do, class, is that, you see, there's no nipples exposed right there? I said that, didn't I? But nipples are part of the bicycle wheel. But if there's any exposed nipple, that means that your rim strip is not covering up the nipples correctly. And they can definitely cause a flat tire. Keep that in mind.
So you check the entire rim too.
Just go around and inspect it, and I will look at it closely.
Make sure it had a rim strip malfunction.
Correct, a rim strip malfunction. I couldn't have said that better. Can I use that line on my next?
Yeah, I won't copyright it.
Okay.
You could still give them credit if you wanted to, but
True.
I prefer you did.
Now, let me show you something with a fresh tube. You could be my pretty girl to distract him from my magic if you want, Christian.
Man, you're a fan of white guy?
I gotta make it a day, man. Okay. Usually tubes, when they come in the box, and you buy them at the box shop, with the light color, what you do is they come flat, like a flat one. If you put it in there like that, you're probably gonna have a pinch flat. You're gonna catch it between the bead of the tire and the rim. So I'll give you some advice. Open it up. Open the valve up, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. And if you open it up, you probably push it all the way, turn it back just a skosh. Sometimes that valve can get stuck when you turn it all the way. Now I'm going to blow it away. Close back up. Now see how I've given it some body? It's going to be easier for me to take it back in that tire. So, I'm going to start with the valve hole. I'm going to work my way around. So, put this off kilter here a little bit. Okay. I'll fix it. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is, of course, find my valve hole. Here it is. And the first thing you do is stick the valve into the hole. And what we're going to do is we're going to tuck this tube inside the tire. I'm going to pick it up, and I'm going to work slowly. If you're in a race and you try to go too fast, you can make a mistake. And you have another flat, you just watch. We go very slowly and tuck it in all the way around. And if you got too much air in there, you can always let some out. And I kind of work my finger all the way around. And what I'm trying to do is, I'm going to replace that bead back onto the rim without pinching it. Now my next step is I start back at the valve. I usually start here. I'm going to work my way around and end up at the valve. I'm going to start right here and start tucking it in. It takes a little finger strength, but the more you do it, the better you'll become. So you need to have a lot of flats.
How long do you usually go without a flat?
Well, I can have 3 in a week and 3 in 5 years. There's no rhyme or reason.
I've never had one.
You shouldn't have said that. You should not have said that, Neil.
I said it before.
You're cursed.
next time you're on the bike, for sure.
Now, I have popped the bead all the way around, but there's still some steps to go. What I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of go all the way back around and work that back and forth. And what I'm trying to do is get that bead, both sides, seated incorrectly. Because if you don't, and you add the air, you can blow it off the rim. Have an aneurysm? Sounds like a gunshot. I'm going to go all the way around. Now, this valve, pretend this is perpendicular. This is a T. Make sure this valve is straight up and down. I don't want to cock this way or that. Okay? But this is important. There's more material on the end of this valve. It's connected to the tube. Sometimes that material, that extra material, gets caught in there. So this is important. Push up, pull down. Do it a couple times. And what you're doing is you're pushing it away from the beads there, and you're pulling it back down. Now I'll get my little mini pump here. Stick it on there. But you got to open up the valve. That helps. But remember, it gets stuck. Turn it back just a skosh, just a little bit. Push down, and then pumps down. It's starting to pump in there. This doesn't look right, does it, Christian?
Oh, it looks so right.
Now, I don't want to pump it up to full pressure yet. There's a reason why. I'll show you. It's still pretty hard. This little baby works. It's called a rocket. Take it off. But, how do I know it's seated correctly? Before I go any further with any air pressure, I want to pick it up, spin it, and if you see any irregular hops in it, like bloop, bloop, it's not seated correctly. And you pump it up to full capacity, it's going to blow. Okay? Spin it, and I don't see any irregular hops. So that's a good sign. If it's not seated over here, it'll start bulging this way, it's bulging that way. Then it becomes an aneurysm. When you get 110, 115 pounds of pressure in there, it'll blow out. I call that an aneurysm. But I'm going to put more air in it. Actually, let's use another product. This is a floor pump, and this is really something good to have at home. You want to be my assistant? I won't get your hands too dirty. I'm going to pump some air into it. Open that valve, turn it back a little bit. A lot of people have issues with this step. Push it up, lock it. You're good at it. You really are. I'm going to put 100 PSI in. That'll get me back home. Close it back up. Double check. Thank you, Neil. You did it really well. Back home. Spin it. No irregular hops, which is good. Close the valve. Now, a lot of little Presta valves, there are different types of valves, but on most road bikes you'll have a Presta valve. Close that valve, and usually there's a little cap here. That's the sign of an engine on the way. I never have valve caps on my valves. But you can put it on there, it's cool. Now, I got to put it back in here. This is where a lot of folks have a lot of problems. But I'm going to get my assistant parent to help me. I want you to hold that up, the whole bike bearing. And what we're going to do is we're going to put this back wheel back into the frame. So we can get down the road. That thing is still cool. Now, cassette side goes on the drive side. Thank you, Seeability, Neil. Now, if you notice on the chain, broken up into two parts here. That cluster here, this cluster, has to go in between these two chains. Has to. Or it won't go in correctly. I'll show you. And put it on that small cog, it'll be easier to go back in. You're doing a beautiful job here. Okay, you can put it back down. Now I've gotten it back into the frame. And the first thing I want to see is, that's pretty loose. That is dangerously loose, so that needs to be tightened. I'm going to come over here to this other side and tighten that nut. And I am going to pull the wheel into the dropout, see if it's centered in the frame, but that's still too loose. Go back, tighten it up some more, Use your hand, close it. Now, this is what a lot of people do. They close that lever onto the frame. It is not closed and it's dangerous. Pretend this is a plane. I want you to break that plane. And how do you know how tight it is? Pull it in, leaves an indentation on your hand. Now, the next step is to close that little fulcrum. Remember that was our first step? And spin it. It's rubbing. That's not good. This is a wonderful learning opportunity. So I'm going to double check, make sure it's in there. But what I discovered is that the brake is crooked.